Hello, me, Eric, your chaplain, yet again. Another week of fantastic weather, another week of being locked at home. And we would love to hear how you are spending the days. We see some of you have had picnics in the garden. Some of you held family Olympics in the garden. Fantastic. We would love to hear and see more of you. So please do get in touch. The details will be at the end of this video. I think I heard some of you shout on the top of your voice self-esteem, as we do in the hall, as the slide was going along earlier in the video. There are two things I would like to share with you today, and one of them is a famous Bible story. You might know it. You should know it. It's the story of David and Goliath. And why don't we have a look at it just to refresh our minds? Here we go.
God's story, David and Goliath. So part of God's story is about the time David fought Goliath. And it begins like this. David was the youngest of 8 brothers. His job was being a shepherd, which meant he spent all day in a field watching sheep eat and roll around the grass. Meanwhile, some of his brothers were off with the Israeli army preparing for war against the Philistines. The Philistines were one of the toughest armies the people of Israel had to fight. So one day, David was taking food to his brothers because his dad asked him to. But when he got there, his brothers accused him of coming so he could watch the fight instead of the sheep. Since David knew in his heart he was just obeying his dad, he didn't mind being misunderstood. Anyway, while David was there, he saw a huge Philistine man, more than 9 feet tall, step onto the field between the two armies. He was wearing a thick helmet and armor and carrying huge weapons. His name was Goliath, and he was definitely used to being the winner. David found out that Goliath had been stepping onto the field like this every morning for the past 40 days and saying, "Give me a man and let us fight each other." But nobody from Israel was brave enough to fight him, even the king. Well, David didn't like that this giant was intimidating the Israelites. After all, they were God's special family. And because God was with the Israelites, they could have courage in any situation. So David, who wasn't even a soldier, told the king, "I'll fight against him." Now, the king thought David was too small, but he really wanted someone to fight Goliath. So he gave in. And David knew he wasn't strong enough to beat Goliath by himself, but he believed God would be with him. So he said, "The Lord will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." The king hoped David was right. He even had his own weapons and armor put on David, but they didn't fit him. David decided to go into battle in his regular clothes. That's how sure he was that God would help him. Anyway, David went to a nearby stream and chose 5 smooth stones to use with his slingshot. Then he walked onto the battlefield to meet the massive Goliath. When Goliath saw how wimpy David looked, he was furious. He thought he'd get to fight the Israelites' strongest warrior. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals." David might have looked like a wimp, but he was actually really brave. In fact, he was so brave that when he was taking care of sheep, he fought off bears and lions. Because God helped him protect his sheep, David knew God would help him protect this special family. David said, "You come at me with a sword, but I come at you with the name of the Lord Almighty." He was explaining to Goliath that God was more powerful than anything. He also added that he would feed Goliath's flesh to the birds, which made the giant even more mad. Then David took a stone, put it in the slingshot, and slung it at Goliath. Goliath didn't even get a chance to swing a sword because the stone hit him right in the forehead and sunk in deep. He face-planted straight into the ground. Nobody could believe it. Then David ran over, took hold of the giant's sword, and drew it from the sheath. He took the sword and cut off Goliath's head. David carried the head all the way back to Jerusalem. And when the Philistine army realized Goliath was dead, they started running away like a bunch of scaredy cats. The Israelites chased the Philistines, shouting loudly. They had won. God used David, who was just an average kid, to rescue his people. And that's the story of David and Goliath. So, in case you missed it, here's the quick version. David was a shepherd. He brought his brothers lunch. He saw Goliath. Goliath scared everybody. David wasn't scared. He knew God was stronger. David fought Goliath. He used one stone. God helped him kill Goliath. The Israelites won. God's people were saved. And that's a part of God's story.
David and Goliath. What an amazing video. What an amazing story. And it's a true story in the Bible. And of course, the question is, who or what is your Goliath? And you might say, well, it's Corona. Corona is my Goliath. That's the one I want to slay right now. And I don't know whether you heard or remembered the words that David says when Goliath says, what are you doing? You're too tiny. You're too small. Who do you think you are? Is that the best Israel got to offer? And he basically threw insult upon insult on David. And David took it on the chin, and then he says these words, I come against you in the name of the God of Israel. See, he knew who he had authority from, and that was from God himself. So if you've got something big in your life that you are fearing, like a Goliath, then what is it? Pray about it. And like David, say, I come against you in the name of the God of Israel, and see what happens. And do let us know if you get an answer to that prayer. If you see your Goliath being slain, wouldn't that be amazing? And this story comes in the same week as our patron saint, I suppose, of England, and that of course is Saint George, who slayed the dragon. And maybe you could reenact that. Be careful with the swords. Maybe you can make yourself a shield. And the Bible is also mentioning the word shield a lot. The Bible itself can be a shield. Jesus, God our Father, can be a shield to protect us. And that's another prayer that we keep on praying for you guys and your families, that God will protect you, that God will be his shield around you, over you and your family. So think about that as you celebrate St. George's Day tomorrow with us. There is another thing that I would like just to leave you with, another small thought, and that is when David finally killed Goliath, there was a big party going on in Israel, because finally the big enemy was gone. And no doubt there will be street parties or whatever, however we're going to celebrate the end of all of this. It's going to be strange. But maybe you want to celebrate a victory in your life. Maybe you want to commemorate that you've been stuck indoors for 5 weeks. Have a celebration. And for that, of course, you need a good band. And ask your mum and dad's permission before you do the following. But have a look at this video and maybe you can reenact it. It's called a kitchen stomp. Oh, the things that people come up with these days, isn't it amazing? So that is the kitchen stump for you, stump kitchen. And I would have a final challenge. And for that, I would like to offer this one again as a reminder that if you want to win that, you will ask you to come up with your own emoji. How are you feeling right now? Are you feeling victorious like David? Are you feeling afraid like all the Israelites? I want you to create, we would like you to create your own emoji. It could be a mixture of all the emojis that are already around, because there are many, many. So draw a circle and draw some emojis. And then we would love to hear from you either through the Boys Brigade website, Facebook, or through my email, which will appear at the end of this video. And we thank you for joining us today, and hopefully things can only get better. So I'm looking forward to the videos of you and your stump kitchen, or of you designing a brand new emoji, or maybe even reenacting the St. George's Day. However you celebrate the rest of this week, have a good one. I'll see you next week.